Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I'm a woman on a mission to assemble a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world one character at a time. And it all starts with one thing: a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. This is episode number 11. The problem with positive psychology. Peterson and Seligman, in their book Character Strengths and Virtues, describe their goals in creating their classification system for the positive psychological traits, the traits that lead to health. They compare and contrast their system to the DSM, especially DSM-3 and beyond, which is a system that is a manual of mental disorders. And the DSM has had a number of strengths, which was their ability to be very specific, but it had some weaknesses too, which is such as overcomplexity. They had more than 300 disorders. Well, Peterson and Seligman wanted to maintain the values, the strengths of the DSM model, but avoid its problems. One of the strengths they also liked was that it was multidimensional. It measured things along quite a number of axes, and they wanted to preserve that. Well, in their character strengths, they came up with 24 character strengths. I haven't seen them listed yet, but the character strength menu that I teach has 28 character strengths, so that's pretty close. They then, for added dimensionality, they included talents and abilities, and they included circumstances that could prevent or enhance the talents and abilities from being expressed, so they also looked at the outcomes that ensue from that. But they had a challenge that they expressed, and they kind of expressed it as a frustration. They said, "We sometimes find ourselves sounding like bad evangelists, going on and on about virtue, but convincing no one, even ourselves, that virtue is worth pursuing." And that's they actually fell into a trap. And to me, it was pretty clear what the trap was, but it was pretty obvious also that they did not see that trap themselves. They listed two worries that they had going in. The first worry was that this science will not thrive if it generates only ho-hum findings that every Sunday school teacher or grandparent already knew. That was their first worry. Their second was that we hope that the new science of character addresses explicitly what is invigorating about the good life. Well, where did they fail? Well, the problem that they ran into, in part, was I think they created their first problem when they wanted to include multidimensionality. Since they had not yet deduced and elucidated the one dimension of the character strengths and virtues, I think they confused things a bit by trying to add extra dimensions from the start. They should have started with one dimension, and then it might have been a little bit apparent what the second trap that they fell into. If you think about it, they wanted to look at the dimension of positive strengths and virtues. Well, you can't really look at an axis only from one side, only from the positive side. You also have to understand the negative side. Now, it may well be that they thought they did understand the negative side, that here we have health, and DSM, we have illness. So we have health and illness, positive, negative. But that's not accurate. The negative of virtue is vice. And vice is quite different from mental disorders. a trap that a fiction writer will not fall into. Because a fiction writer who is very, very conversant in the full dimension, I teach 28 different character strengths, okay, 24 for them, but a fiction writer knows that you have to have strengths and weaknesses played against one another. You can't have an interesting story. You can't even write a good guidepost story. You can't even write a good story for the Sunday school class, the proverbial one they didn't want to sound like, without having a contrast between strengths and positive choices and negative choices, with virtues and vices. And that is the trap that they fell into. And to me, that in fact is the power of fiction writing, and why fiction writing may have more power to produce the desired effects of positive psychology than the positive psychologists can see for themselves. Because fiction looks at the whole gamut of human experience, the positives and the negatives. And when you throw those choices out there, as a human being, you get to play with the concept of being on bad behavior, which you wouldn't want to do in your normal life, and which a psychologist can't possibly propose as a treatment therapy. But you can write a story where you test things out and discover that, whoa, that does not work for the character, and it probably wouldn't work in my life either. So, never underestimate the power of the story, but the power of the story enlightened by a complete understanding of what psychology, especially positive psychology, has to offer, can be a very, very powerful adjunct to the skill set of a fiction writer. That's all for today. Bye-bye.